Okay, this video came out of this morning. I was doing, my daily, I try to do something cultural and artistic Christian aesthetics every morning. And I had to find the cover for the book Christmas Carol. And in so doing, I came across the cover for the book Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. I read this in college when I was taking a class in Russian literature. And I remember the book as being extraordinary. The descriptions were so vivid. You felt as if you were there, with Anna Karenina and with Vronsky, and it was extraordinary. I had never read a book like that where it had been said by Nabokov, another Russian writer, about Tolstoy, that he had a fundamental accuracy of perception and the ability to articulate it. You felt like you were there, and you're reading it in translation, like Constance Garnett is the best of the 1800s Russian translators because she is so religious. People criticize her for that, but that's how it was. That's why it's appropriate. But then I had also thought about it, and I ended up not liking the book. Despite loving the descriptions, I ended up coming away with the book feeling bad. And I'm like, I didn't understand it at first. And then I read an essay by Ayn Rand about Tolstoy, and she said why she hates Leo Tolstoy, and he's a terrible writer, and it's a waste of time to read him. And I'm like, how could you say it's a waste of time to read him when his description is incredible? And here's what Ayn Rand said. This cover summarizes it perfectly. This is Anna Karenina. She is married to this older man who she doesn't love, and it's not a happy marriage, okay? And then she falls in love with this dashing young officer, Vronsky, but society condemns her for this, and she sees herself as having no way out, and she throws herself in front of a train. And that's why Ayn Rand hated Tolstoy, because she says Tolstoy gives his characters no way out. He makes life seem hopeless and bleak, and he implies that there is no option other than to conform and do as you are told. And I got that same feeling from Tolstoy. He was just sort of a miserable jerk. And I read then some biographies about him, in particular his description of him in Paul Johnson's book, The Intellectuals. Tolstoy was a bad man. He was terrible to people in real life. He was terrible. He disowned his wife and children. The more you learn about him, the more you'll hate Tolstoy. So despite being able to describe things accurately, he's not nice, and he doesn't have any good plan for life, and he was a great writer in his descriptive capacity, but not in his message. So anyways, what else is this little talk about? I thought this painting was magnificent. The train, the snow, the sense of Russia, the coldness, the theater, the chairs tipped over, Anna looking for a way out. I mean, it captures the young, handsome, daring Vronsky and the dour, upset old husband of Anna Karenina. So anyways, all right, so why did I make this talk? Besides showing this magnificent painting, I mean, it captures the emotion and the setting perfectly. I thought, what good is all this literature? Because I read tons of literature and I really liked it, and it was something I shared when I was young with my father, even though I didn't really understand the books that well. I just wanted to read what my dad was reading, and I read all the English Victorian age novels, etc. And, Thomas Hardy kind of reminds me of Tolstoy, and I didn't like him either. The way he sort of ruined the life of Tessa the D'Urbervilles, and his other books were kind of bleak. I found them bleak, The Mayor of Casterbridge and all that other stuff. But anyways, I think it was good for my vocabulary, even though I didn't understand it at the time. I later came to have an understanding of literature, and these books had a big influence on me. I'm going to briefly go through some of these because, these are what's worth reading. Dostoevsky shows the way in Brothers Karamazov. So Ivan was the great intellectual, and he wrote that magnificent chapter, The Grand Inquisitor. But Ivan sort of was trending into atheism, and that ruined his thinking and his happiness. You want to be like Alyosha in your heart, even though it's okay. It's good to be like Ivan, a good thinker. But if your heart's in the right place, then you're able to handle things better. You become more resilient, and you become more likable. You do the best you can with your given situation. So Alyosha was intensely Christian, a monk when he was younger, and then Father Zosima sent him out of the monastery to experience life. And Alyosha would go around solving problems and being nice to people, there was a rift between his brother Dmitri and the father of a young boy who sort of rebelled against the other boys in school. And Dostoevsky, made things work. He reconciled everybody. Okay, and then if you want to look for an attitude in life, the best one, comes out of Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. The attitude of gratitude when Scrooge realizes to be grateful for what he has and the people in his life. And attitude of gratitude ends up being better for everybody, for Scrooge and for everybody around him, okay? And like I said, you see Alyosha. That's the message of how to live in Brothers Karamazov. Okay, in Quo Vadis, you get a strong contrast between the behavior of the Romans. The Romans were a little bit like modern Americans, decadent. You know, Will Durant had said, just as Rome was to ancient Greece, so is the modern United States of America to Europe. It was the Romans had all this power, but they learned from the ancient Greeks how to live in a good way. The ancient Greeks are really the beginning of Christianity, okay? Yes, I know the Old Testament is also, but it's underestimated how much the ancient Greeks shaped Christianity, and especially Catholicism. All right, so anyways, in Quo Vadis, you see the Christians are so nice and so good, and you see the Romans are so brutal and decadent and vulgar. And, you know, United States initially learned a lot from the Christian influence of European literature and art, and the 1800s were a magnificent time. As Ayn Rand had said, her book, by the way, The Romantic Manifesto, was the best book ever written about literature. Second best book ever written about literature would be The Art of Literature by Schopenhauer. But Ayn Rand's book is magnificent. Anybody who cares about literature, you should read that book. It's a masterpiece, okay? And she says the literature of the 1800s is the best that literature has ever been in the history of mankind. And she's right. Ayn Rand's usually right about a lot of things. She doesn't understand religion too well, but man, is she good on literature. Okay, so getting back to Quo Vadis, Ayn Rand described this as the greatest book ever written. It is quite extraordinary. And the main thing you see is a psychology, first of all, of the brain of a man when he falls in love with a woman. Okay, Vinicius falls in love with Lydia. She is the barbarian princess, okay, and she is a Christian. And you just see how good the Christians are compared to the Romans, and that's a valuable message. It shows the contrast, because like America is sort of trending into atheism, dictatorship, brutality, constant lying. Once you go down the path of atheism, it's all lies and brutality all the way down. There's no respect for humans at all. Any feigned respect is just fake. So Quo Vadis shows that contrast magnificently, as well as a love story. Again, you're getting this picture of how can I live a meaningful life? How can I live a happy life? How could I live a life whereby I respect myself and like myself, okay? And you'll see that Christianity is the best way to go. It shows you that, you know, despite all the frustration, sadness, disappointments, and setbacks in life and unfairness, you do the best you can with what you got where you're at. Okay. Les Mis also shows how you should behave when you have power. And sort of the greatest scene in Les Mis is when the bishop forgave Jean Valjean, and then Jean Valjean became a great man. Because he had an attitude of gratitude, Jean Valjean pushed himself to become a great man. He was a great mayor. He was a great friend. He was a great, stepfather. To Cosette. It was just a beautiful book, Les Mis. Again, it's a masterpiece by Victor Hugo. Okay, and then, life's more than all that. I enjoy the fun books, books like The Importance of Being Earnest and Alice in Wonderland. Tristram Shandy's not quite as good as those other two. Tristram Shandy's about on the same level as Don Quixote. A lot of fun, a lot of farce and satire and silliness, but it's still a very clever book, and so is Don Quixote, but Don Quixote's too long. Okay, but anyways, Important to Being Earnest is the best of these, okay? It is really funny and clever. And Oscar Wilde, he was good in his heart, even though and he was magnificent with words. He screwed up and became alcoholic and stuff. But, man, when he wrote Importance of Being Earnest, that was when he was at his best, okay? It's like the importance of being playful and fun. You have to work a lot. You have to live your life, and time's going to go by no matter what. So you might as well be nice to other people and be making jokes and having fun where you can. Joking's a good thing, okay? You don't do it in a mean way to other people, but joking a lot is great. I learned that from my mother. Wherever my mother was, I noticed everybody was always laughing and cracking up. And I would meet people, and they would just, bow their heads and kiss my hand and say, "We love your mother." And I noticed it was because my mom was so nice and so much fun. She was always cracking jokes. And so sort of like, why not be that way? Pinocchio was a magnificent book. It's not just a children's book. It's a major work of literature. And it's especially a coming of age, a Bildungsroman, type novel, coming of age, where, you kind of dally around and do some stupid stuff when you're young, irresponsible. But Pinocchio basically in his heart is a good boy. He loves his father Geppetto. He loves the blue lady who symbolizes his mother and also symbolizes, in a sense, the Virgin Mary and Christianity. And he accepts his responsibility as he gets older, and he tries to help Geppetto. He tries to help the lady with the blue hair, which is his mother, Queen of Heaven. As far as understanding male-female relationships, there's some excellent books amongst the great books of literature, and those would include Gone with the Wind. I mean, that's a masterpiece. I recommend the audio CD. It's like 51 audio CDs. I didn't want it to end. It was so magnificent. But you also catch male-female relationships in that book. And Scarlett O'Hara, though she's fascinating and you like her, you don't want to marry her, okay? She's totally opportunistic, and a lot of women are like that. The other women, well, you just read the book, and I made several other videos about Gone with the Wind, and you'll see it. It's magnificent. It's it's one of the most entertaining books ever written. The movie is extraordinary as well. The book is better than the movie, surprisingly, but the movie is magnificent. And Vivian Leigh was perfect as Scarlett O'Hara. Okay, but I made some videos about it, so if you're curious about that, you'll see it. I was very interested in that. The next one is Sorrows of Young Werther, and that's written by Goethe. And the gist of Sorrows of Young Werther was, don't take romance and love too seriously, or it can end up as a disaster. It's sort of like a much more sophisticated version of Romeo and Juliet. Okay, I've made videos about all these books separately and stuff, but I'm just talking in this young video here about how books will influence how you think in life, and all of these books shape personal development in a good way. I would even say, going back to Quo Vadis just briefly, it was reminiscent of Pascal's Pensée. Okay, basically the idea that to have meaning in your life, that makes you happy. And you basically end up coming to the Christian way, which basically says you have your cross to bear. Life is difficult. You're half screwed. At least you're not completely screwed. How can you make the best of what you've got? Okay? And, you just look at yourself. Like I look at myself. I say, well, gee, I'm frustrated with conventional medicine because it has no interest in improvement and it really doesn't help much for the patient. I'm glad I can make some money with it. And there is some good in it. And I try to make the most of the good in it. I make this YouTube channel and write my books because it's the best I can do with my life. I try to help the proles. It's very frustrating helping the proles. Most of them are hopeless, and they're just too ignorant and lazy. But, the internet you can find are the ones who want to learn and want to improve their life and the life of those around them. They can find your thing. And even though I'm shadow banned and all this other stuff, at least some people will find my work and it'll help them. So that's what I hope to come out of that. Another thing you can learn from the great books of literature is that you should beware of the system, because most time the system in place really could care less about the proles. The system in place is to maintain the power and wealth of the established aristocracy, ruling class, controllers, whatever you want to call it. And all of these books here are magnificent. 1984, Animal Farm, Brave New World. Brave New World teaches you not just to be afraid of brutal authority, but also to be afraid of messages which destroy you. Hedonism destroys people. Much, much better to be stoic and Christian. Okay, bear your cross and make the most of it. Again, I remember when I was recruited as an athlete at Stanford. I was in senior year of high school, and I went on a recruiting trip out to Stanford, and one of the All-American wrestlers had a sign on his wall, and it said, "Do not pray for an easier life because you will not get it. Pray to become a stronger person because that is doable." And I'm like, yep, that's what you have to do. Because, you're not going to win the lottery. Nobody's going to come save you. You just have to save yourself. And you save yourself by becoming better informed and better disciplined and sticking to, good habits that you figure out for yourself. And that's about the best you can do. Atlas Shrugged tells you kind of how the economy really works. Basically, there's some powerful people who control most things, and they want it for themselves, and they really could give two rats' tails about you, and they maybe even hate you, and there's nothing you can do about that. Okay, The Fountainhead, magnificent, again by Ayn Rand. Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. Hamlet also shows you how upside down a system can be. Poland by Missioner and Trinity by year. So Poland's the story of Poland by Missioner. It's magnificent. Poland's basically, three-quarters screwed, located between Russia and Germany and Austria. Trinity shows how Ireland's largely screwed. It's, totally been crushed by Britain, enslaved it for 1,000 years, and even right now it's being then what comes after that, the word cited, opened up the what, it's what I'm talking about, border, and lets in a bunch of people that want to destroy the place, and the rulers encourage that. And so sadly that's happening to most of the Western world, and Christians are so weak, uninformed, and stupid and feminized they don't do anything about it. But anyways, hopefully America will survive and improve again. We'll see. Anyways, this cover just was so magnificently beautiful. It struck me and it made me feel like making this video. I hope you found it interesting or helpful.